Hey, welcome back. I'm really glad you're here today. Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually think about this. When was the last time you sat down with a good book and just got lost in it? Not scrolling, not watching, not swiping, just reading. Because here's what science has been telling us, quietly, consistently, for the last several years, that one single habit, more than almost anything else you can do, literally reshapes your brain. It makes you sharper, calmer, more creative, more empathetic, and research now suggests it may even help you live longer. That habit? Reading books. Today, we're going deep on this. I've got fascinating science, some stories that might surprise you, and a set of practical tips that will make starting this habit feel almost effortless. If you've ever wanted to read more but just couldn't make it stick, give this video a thumbs up right now. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe because we talk about things like this every single week. All right, let's get into it. So here's something that honestly stopped me in my tracks when I first came across it. Research published just in the last couple of years has tracked reading habits across multiple countries, and the pattern is the same everywhere. The average adult now spends less than 19 minutes a day reading for pleasure. Less than 19 minutes. Meanwhile, we're spending anywhere from 4 to 7 hours a day on our phones. And I get it, I really do. We're not lazy, we're just overwhelmed. Our attention has been hijacked by systems designed by the smartest engineers on the planet specifically to keep us hooked. Every notification, every scroll, every autoplay, it all works against our ability to sit still and focus. The apps win. And our books? They sit on the shelf, spines uncracked, quietly waiting. Here's what's really troubling though. The research also shows that the more time we spend in fragmented, dopamine-driven scrolling environments, the harder it becomes to read deeply. Our brains actually lose the capacity for sustained attention over time if we don't actively practice it. Think about that. The very thing that makes reading powerful, sustained, immersive focus, is the thing we're training ourselves out of every day without even realizing it. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now. How many books have you read in the last year? Be honest. 1, 5, 0? Let's see where everyone's at. Okay, so now here's where it gets really fascinating. Because if the problem is that our brains are being reshaped by our habits, then here's the extraordinary thing. They can be reshaped back. That's the miracle of neuroplasticity. Your brain isn't fixed. It's not a finished product. It's more like a living city, constantly building new roads, demolishing old ones, rerouting traffic based on where you actually drive. And reading? Reading is like adding an entire highway system. Here's what really surprised me when I went deep on the neuroscience behind this. When you read, not skim, but actually read, your brain doesn't just passively receive words, it lights up like a concert hall. Researchers using brain imaging have found that reading narrative text activates regions associated with sight, sound, smell, and movement, all at once. Your brain actually simulates the experience. You're not just reading about a rainstorm, your sensory cortex is processing rain. And it goes further. Studies from the past 2 years have shown that regular readers develop measurably thicker neural pathways in regions tied to language processing, working memory, and this one is beautiful, empathy. The part of your brain that helps you understand other people's emotions, it literally grows stronger through reading. There's also been really compelling work on what researchers call the deep reading state. It's almost like a meditative mode. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for focus, planning, and decision-making, becomes more active and more efficient the more you practice reading. We're talking about building the cognitive equivalent of muscle. And memory? Readers consistently outperform non-readers on tests of both short-term and long-term recall. Because every time you read, you're exercising the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. You're essentially working out your ability to retain and connect information. Imagine if we thought of reading the way we think of going to the gym. 30 minutes of reading a day? That's your brain's workout. All right, so we know the science. Now let's talk about what this actually means for your life. Because the benefits of consistent reading aren't just abstract. They're tangible, measurable, and they show up in real ways in your relationships, your work, your health, and how you feel every single day. I've got 10 of them for you. Let's go through them together. 1. Expanded vocabulary and communication. Every book is essentially a vocabulary lesson you never have to study for. You absorb new words in context, which is actually the most effective way to learn them. And here's the thing. People who communicate well are perceived as more intelligent, more trustworthy, and more capable. Vocabulary isn't just words, it's power. 2. Better focus and concentration. In a world of 4-second TikToks, sustained focus is becoming a superpower. Reading trains your brain to stay with one thing, to follow a thread, to hold tension, to not just swipe away when it gets hard. 20 minutes of reading a day can meaningfully rebuild your concentration span within just a few weeks. Imagine what that does for your work, your relationships, your goals. 3. Reduced stress. This one is backed by some genuinely striking research. Studies have found that reading for as little as 6 minutes can reduce physiological stress markers, heart rate, muscle tension by up to 68%. That's more effective than going for a walk, listening to music, or having a cup of tea. Something about the deep absorption of reading pulls you out of your own anxious mental chatter and drops you somewhere else entirely. It's like a mini vacation your brain takes every time you open a book. 4. Increased empathy. We touched on this with the neuroscience, but let me expand. When you read, especially fiction, stories about people whose lives are different from yours, you literally practice seeing the world through other eyes. You inhabit different cultures, different struggles, different joys, and research shows this directly translates into how you treat people in real life. Readers are measurably more empathetic, more patient, and better listeners. In a world that feels increasingly divided, that matters. 5. Improved decision-making. Books, especially biographies, history, and well-crafted fiction, are essentially libraries of human experience. Every time you read about how a person navigated a difficult choice, a moral dilemma, a moment of crisis, your brain files that away. You're building a mental model of how decisions play out. So when you face your own crossroads in your career, your relationships, your life, you're not starting from zero. You have a whole lifetime of vicarious wisdom to draw from. 6. Longer lifespan. Okay, this one genuinely surprised me the first time I read it. A large-scale study tracking adults over 12 years found that people who read books for 30 or more minutes daily lived on average nearly 2 years longer than non-readers. Not magazines, not social media, books specifically. The researchers believe it's a combination of cognitive stimulation, stress reduction, and the sense of purpose and engagement that reading provides. 2 extra years just from reading. Let that land. 7. Career advantages. Here's something fascinating. Look at almost any person who has risen to the top of their field. Entrepreneurs, CEOs, scientists, creatives, athletes, leaders, and you'll almost always find a voracious reader. Not because reading is some secret hack, but because it compounds. Every book is access to someone else's decade of expertise compressed into a few hours of your time. The world's most successful people read a lot. That's not a coincidence. 8. Boosted creativity. Here's the thing about creativity that most people don't realize. It doesn't come from nothing. It comes from connections, unexpected links between ideas you've encountered. Reading fills your mind with raw material, images, metaphors, perspectives, stories, concepts. The more you read, the more your brain has to play with. Writers, designers, musicians, entrepreneurs, so many of them trace their breakthrough ideas back to something they read years earlier that their brain quietly held onto. 9. Better sleep. We've all been there, lying in bed, phone in hand, doom scrolling until midnight while telling ourselves we'll go to sleep soon. Here's a simple swap that research consistently supports. Replace your screen with a physical book for 30 minutes before bed. The absence of blue light, the slower cognitive pace, the immersive focus, it all signals your nervous system that it's time to wind down. People who read before bed fall asleep faster, sleep more deeply, and wake up more rested. That alone changes everything. 10. Stronger overall well-being. And this last one ties everything together. Reading gives you something the modern world often fails to provide, a sense of depth, meaning, and quiet inner richness. When you read regularly, you're not just gaining information, you're building a relationship with your own mind. You feel less restless, less empty, more grounded. There's a quality of life that comes from being a reader that's hard to describe until you have it, and once you do, you never want to let it go. I want to tell you about 3 people, and I think you'll recognize yourself in at least one of them. The first is a woman I'll call Priya. She was 28, working a demanding job in finance, constantly exhausted, constantly anxious, feeling like she was just moving through life without really living it. A friend challenged her to read just 10 pages every morning before looking at her phone. She started. It felt small, almost silly, but within 3 weeks, she noticed something. Her mornings felt different, calmer, more hers. 2 months in, she'd finished her first book in 4 years. She said it felt like she'd remembered a version of herself she'd forgotten existed. That clarity started spilling into her work, her relationships, everything. The second is a 20-year-old student, let's call him Tariq, who was genuinely struggling to get through his university coursework. His attention span had been shredded by years of social media. He couldn't read more than a paragraph without losing focus. He started with something light, just stories he actually enjoyed, and committed to 20 minutes before bed each night instead of his phone. After 6 weeks, his reading speed had improved. After 3 months, he was finishing assignments faster than he ever had. His grades improved. More importantly, he told me that for the first time in years, he felt smart again. And then there's a gentleman I'll call Mr. Hassan, 67 years old, recently retired, feeling that particular kind of loneliness that can come after a lifetime of work suddenly stops. His daughter bought him a stack of books. At first, he read to fill the silence, but then something happened. He started a small book club at his local community center. He found people. He found conversation. He found purpose again. He said reading didn't just give him something to do, it gave him something to be. 3 very different lives, 1 shared habit. And you know what's remarkable? The people who tend to have the most profound relationships with reading, many of the world's most impactful minds, the most thoughtful leaders, the most creative people, they all credit it not just as something they do, but as something fundamental to who they are. Okay, so you're sold. Or maybe you've been nodding along this whole time because you already know all this. You just haven't made it stick yet. Either way, this is the part where we get practical. Because wanting to read more and actually reading more are 2 very different things, and the gap between them is almost always about systems, not willpower. 1. Start embarrassingly small. Forget the goal of finishing a book a week. Start with 5 pages a day. That's it, 5 pages. On a slow day, that's 10 minutes. Make it so easy your brain can't say no. The habit is the goal, not the volume. 2. Attach reading to something you already do. This is called habit stacking. Already drink coffee in the morning? That's your reading window. Already have a commute? Audiobooks count. Make reading the thing that naturally follows something else in your routine. 3. Keep a book visible. Put it on your pillow, on the kitchen counter, on your desk. We do what we see. Hide your phone if you need to. Make the book the path of least resistance. 4. Read what you actually enjoy. I can't stress this enough. The best book for you is the one you'll actually finish. It doesn't have to be serious or sophisticated or impressive. It just has to pull you in. 5. Give yourself permission to quit a book. Life is too short for books you hate. If something isn't working after 50 pages, put it down without guilt. Every book you abandon is creating space for one that will genuinely light you up. 6. Create a reading environment. Good light, a comfortable seat, a warm drink, and your phone in another room. 5 minutes of deliberate setup can transform reading from a chore into the highlight of your day. 7. Track your reading, not to compete, just to see. Even a simple note in your phone of what you've read this year creates momentum. You'll be amazed what happens when you can actually see your progress. 8. Join or form a reading community, a book club, an online forum, even just one friend to trade recommendations with. Reading is often thought of as a solitary act, but sharing it multiplies the joy. You are not alone in wanting this. We're almost at the end, and I want to leave you with something. Here's what I believe, genuinely believe, about reading. It is the single most accessible, affordable, and quietly transformative habit available to any human being on earth. It asks very little, a book, some light, a few quiet minutes, and it gives back in return almost everything. A sharper mind, a kinder heart, a richer inner life, a longer, more meaningful existence. You don't have to start with an hour. You don't have to finish a book a month. You just have to open one. Tonight, put the phone down 30 minutes earlier. Find something you've been meaning to read or pick something completely new. Make yourself a cup of tea, find a comfortable spot, and just begin. Because the version of you that reads, that has this habit, is sharper, calmer, more creative, more empathetic, and frankly, more alive. And that version of you is just a few pages away. Now, I would love to know your biggest takeaway from today. What stuck with you? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear from you personally. If this episode gave you something, even one idea that felt useful, please give it a like. It takes 1 second and it means everything for helping this content reach more people who need it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We're here every week with conversations exactly like this one. And if you have a friend or family member who you know should be reading more, share this with them. Sometimes all it takes is the right message at the right moment. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, truly. Now, go pick up a book.